Welcome back to another episode of me talking about albums I liked from the previous month. Today's topic, November. As we reach the end of the year, less and less things start to release, but November still proved to be quite fruitful in releases, even if it didn't have too many. It's always good to keep an ear out even at the end of the year, because some of the best music can still release. Joji returns in bite-sized form with Smithereens. This album is by far his shortest, at only 9 songs and 24 minutes, and it suffers greatly from its lack of depth. Everything about this album feels rushed and messy. There doesn't feel like there's any heart or soul put into this album, as besides 1 or 2 songs. Joji doesn't even have writing credits for most of the album, and it really shows. This feels like a record that was put out to appease record executives, as he's more than likely contractually obligated to release an album every 2 or so years. But he didn't have anything ready besides a couple of songs, Glimpse of Us, Die For You, etc. So he quickly churned this out with some other songs and called it a day. This isn't anything utterly terrible, and I do like some of the cuts out of here, like the 2 aforementioned songs, and songs like Before the Day Is Over or Yukon Interlude. The album, if you want to call it that, is seemingly split into 2 distinct parts, which is made apparent with the track list being split on Spotify. The first part is much more solemn and heartfelt, and it's the part I prefer, while the second seems deliberately marketed as being quote-unquote lo-fi, and full of iPhone demos to sort of excuse the rushed quality of it all. There are still some nicer cuts here, like Night Rider and Yukon Interlude, but again, for the most part, it just feels like rushed nothing. I will say I enjoy it enough to at least put it in the video, but I don't think it's anything special, and Joji definitely doesn't either. 6 out of 10. A random album I found. I like doing these because it could always be something so exciting. This one wasn't one of those, but still. I never heard of Drowse before listening to this, but the genre tags intrigued me. I adore slowcore, dream pop, and shoegaze, so of course I was going to check this out. Wane Into It really isn't anything new or anything to write home about for the genre. If you're a fan of the shoegaze/slowcore genre, then you'll probably like this. Is it anything super special? No, not really, but I can tell that there was heart put into this, so I have to at least give it credit for that. 8 out of 10. When I first heard Titanic Rising back in 2019, it really didn't do that much for me. I gave it a 6 and I went on with my life. But since then, 3 years ago now, holy fuck, a lot has changed. I mean, didn't Natalie say that a lot was gonna change? Wait, did she predict COVID? My opinion on that record has drastically changed. I was very excited for the release of And In the Darkness, because of my newfound love of Titanic Rising, and of course the gorgeous singles that came before its release. This album honestly exceeded my expectations, if that was possible. I would consider this a different type of record to Titanic Rising. It's much slower and doesn't really include any faster paced tracks such as Every Day from Titanic Rising. The album feels like if you took the song Movies and extended it into a full record, and luckily for me, that was my favourite song from the previous album. This album feels like a proper baroque pop record through and through, and Natalie's voice shines throughout. There is one song that stands out among the rest, and that's The Worst Is Done. It's probably the quote-unquote fastest song on the album, if you want to call it that. But it's still relatively tame. It's a fitting way to end the album, alongside the closing track, A Given Thing. It feels like looking off into the sunset with hope in your heart. Even though the past couple of years have been difficult, the future is still bright. Perfect 10. You did it. You did it, Natalie. Well done. Just don't predict anything else, please. This was a really nice listen and a pleasant surprise. I went into this not really expecting too much, but I came out really happy with what I heard. This album is really solid on both a musical and technical level, and just a general level. This shit sounds clean and smooth, and I love it. Front to back, this thing doesn't really miss a beat. It has a clear vision and goes with it, and you're just along for the ride. There's some really solid and great math rock and krautrock, and even totalism, if you even know what that is. Some of these are just amazing jams that just go on and never get old. The major highlight and prime example of that is the 10-minute track Law of Movement, with its bleepy bloops and infectious groove that goes on and on and on with slight changes here and there. I would highly recommend this to anyone who's a fan of the krautrock or totalism genre. Really great stuff. 9 out of 10. Duval Timothy was not a name I had heard of before now. I went into this album blind, minus the genre tags of course, and was happy with what I heard. This was a really relaxing listen with some amazing piano arrangements and some amazing production too. It turns out Timothy was also credited on Kendrick Lamar's newest release, which I had no idea about until I checked, which is really cool to be honest. Go check this out if you're looking for something relaxing to just chill to. 8 out of 10. A recommendation from a friend. They threatened me to listen to this. They told me that this album was amazing, phenomenal, album of the year material even. It's a good album, I liked it. It's a very solid shoegaze release, but honestly not really one of exceptional note. There are some really great tracks here, especially in the second half, but overall this album doesn't really strike me as anything new. There are glimpses of really great ideas, but they don't feel realised enough when they're surrounded by a lot of things that I've heard time and time again. I'll definitely keep an eye on this group in the future, as they definitely have potential. 7 out of 10. When an album opens with a 41-minute song, you know I'm going to be all over that shit. I hadn't been acquainted with Dawson's music before now, but I knew of him enough to already have a curiosity. Before listening to this album, I did go and listen to his previous 2 records, Peasant and 2020, which are all a part of a trilogy, the Ruby Chord ending that trilogy. Peasant takes place in medieval times and sees the struggles of many different characters as they live their lives in such a rough time period. 2020 takes place in the modern day and sees the struggles of the modern age, such as working a job you hate, texting and misinterpreting messages, modern day slavery, Amazon warehouses, and homelessness. I said that way too happily, didn't I? Then finally, we get the Ruby Chord, which takes place in the far dystopian future in which it seems medieval times have returned with a mix of futuristic technology. We see in the opening track, The Hermit, which details a long, treacherous journey from our titular character as he travels across the land. We see him using some kind of augmented headset to see things he wouldn't normally be able to see, and we see the ruins of society laid out in front of him as he travels. It's a gorgeous track, and deserves its extortionate runtime, but it can be very daunting for a lot of people, especially considering there are still 6 more songs on this album, all ranging from 5 to 10 minutes. This album is a beast, but I think it's an incredibly rewarding one to take down. It's very minimal in places when it needs to be, such as in the opener. There are many vocal passages that are stripped bare of all instruments, including Dawson's voice. Again in the opener, the song doesn't truly begin for a whole 11 minutes, almost feeling as if we're watching the hermit prepare for his journey outside into the wasteland.
We may enter a stone beacon tower from which the eye may hold a whole sweep of the kingdom.
The album deals with strong themes of finality, and it works very well as the final album of this trilogy. 8 out of 10. This is an album I've wanted to talk about for such a long time, and I want to write a review on it. In fact, I am, but it just might take a while. I wasn't expecting this album to destroy me as much as it did. From front to back, this album is impeccable, and it's up there with albums such as Preacher's Daughter and Antrim up there. This record deals with some incredibly dark topics, but handles them incredibly well and portrays the sense of both utter hopelessness and a light at the end of the tunnel. Songs like Don't Mind Me, How Settling, and Fantasy World are some of the most crushing songs I've heard all year, even longer than that possibly, bringing me to tears at times, with themes of suicide, having to watch your family grieve because of what you've done, becoming a haunting presence over all who loved you, stuck in limbo, watching the cry as they clean up your things, thinking back to all those happy times you had when you were alive, but now being forced to stay in this purgatory, this hell, with nothing you can do. Then there are also songs like Born Yesterday, Not, and Cassini's Division that feel angry at yourself, angry that you did this to yourself, and now you're stuck here, unable to be free. They're noisy, messy, and unsettling. Do you deserve this? Does anyone deserve this? 10 out of 10. We then get on to our singles of this month. Oh boy! We have some really great singles, I'll be honest. This month has been really solid for music in general, so let's just get into it. Ugly released another single this year, and again, it is an amazing track. This is quite a different style to their previous single, their behemoth I'm Happy You're Here. It's a much more subdued, almost country-esque track with slowcore elements. It's incredibly catchy, with its simple but memorable chorus, sha 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 sha, shut up. It doesn't go like that. I'm not singing it. You can hear it. Just go listen to it. It's an instant earworm, and I can't help but loop it over and over again. It's so fun, it just makes me want even more from this amazing band. I need more. I'd heard of Hatchie before now, and I've been meaning to listen to some of her stuff, so seeing that she dropped a new single last month felt like a great opportunity to do so. I really like this industrial 90s/80s sound. It reminds me a lot of 80s synth and new wavy stuff, with that emphasis on a rough around the edges feel. It bangs, it slaps, and it feels edgy. Parannoul were very high on my end of year list last year, if you remember, so seeing that they've released a new single for their third solo LP has me very excited, especially with what I'm hearing here. This single is exceptional. It's less shoegaze heavy than his previous work and feels much more atmospheric and electronic, but I like it. It feels like Parannoul is really leaning into his element and experimenting with what he wants to do, and people are loving it. I'm loving it. Keep fucking going. I don't think anyone expected this song to be as amazing as it was. Front to back, this thing just goes incredibly hard. I cannot even begin to describe it. This song is just so fun. It reminds me of early Marina and the Diamonds material and just makes me feel so happy and good inside. Everything about this track is silly and funny and happy. If you somehow haven't heard this song yet, go listen to it right now. To close the video, we have Jane Remover's most recent single, Contingency song. I left this track to last because this song is a very unique one. It sounds nothing like anything they've released prior to this, and is an incredibly odd track just in general. This is a drone track with post-rock and shoegaze elements, and overall has an incredibly sinister and depressing feel to it. It's 6.5 minutes and just feels defeated and empty. The lyrics are begging for safety and they feel vulnerable and scared. This song is some of Jane's best writing in it, but also some of their darkest and most depressing lyrics. I pour the boiling water on my hand. I still feel enough to touch myself. And even then, I don't feel like doing it anymore. Lyrics that remind me of the Holy Bible by the Manic Street Preachers. They're dark and ugly, but they're real and they're scary. All of this is framed with an ominous drone that both rises and falls throughout the track. This is an incredibly intriguing single and one that leaves me very excited to see what comes next, but also slightly worried for their mental health. I just hope they're doing okay. And that's November, everyone. Some really good albums and some really good singles. Hopefully the next time you'll see a video like this, it'll be in my top 25 albums of the year list. I probably won't do a December video. I might just combine it with January or ignore it completely, as not much released this month at all, I'll be honest. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Go like and subscribe and donate to my Ko-fi, as this video will probably make no money and I like money. Either way, good night.